He had it all: fame, money, cars, mansions, private jets. The world bowed at his feet. But one horrifying night, everything would collapse and the man who had everything would be left with nothing. The billionaire was more than just rich, he was a living legend. Magazines called him the Sultan of Luxury. Newspapers declared him one of the most powerful men alive, and millions followed his every move online. From London's palaces to Dubai's towers and New York's Fifth Avenue mansions, his properties glittered like jewels across the globe. He owned fleets of sports cars, private islands, and businesses that stretched from continent to continent. Wherever he went, the cameras followed. Paparazzi flashed their lenses as though he were royalty. One smile from him could dominate headlines. A single post on social media brought millions of likes within minutes. People chased him in airports, on streets, at parties, desperate for a selfie, an autograph, or even a glance. His lifestyle was unmatched. Parties on private islands lit up the night sky with fireworks that could be seen for miles. Celebrities, politicians, and athletes all stood in line to be seen at his events. Champagne fountains, golden chandeliers, orchestras, and DJs playing into the morning light. It was a world where nothing was impossible, and excess was celebrated. But behind the wealth was a man drowning in pride. The billionaire believed money could conquer all. With wealth, he often declared, "You are no longer human, you are a god among men." His arrogance grew with every dollar he earned. Employees respected him, but they feared him more. When a staff member stretched out a hand for a handshake, he would step back, smirk, and remind them silently that they could never stand on his level. His daughter and younger brother tried to warn him. They told him life's true treasure was love, humility, and giving joy to others. But he only laughed, brushing aside their words. To him, happiness came from towering mansions and the roar of luxury engines, not from moments of love. On the outside, he looked untouchable. But destiny was already writing a different story. A single night was approaching, a night that would shake his empire, steal his pride, and crush his heart. The billionaire who thought he had everything was about to learn that even the richest man alive cannot buy back life, time, or love. It was supposed to be the greatest celebration of his life, a night of laughter, music, and fireworks. But within minutes, the dream turned into a nightmare no one could forget. The billionaire decided to host a grand celebration on his private island. The guest list included the most powerful figures in the world: Hollywood stars, political leaders, sports champions, and CEOs. The island glittered with lights, the sky blazed with fireworks, and music thundered across the ocean waves. It was the kind of event people would talk about for decades. He stood at the center of it all, dressed in a golden suit, a glass of wine in hand, flashing his confident smile. Guests swarmed around him, praising him, begging for photos, laughing at every word he spoke. Cameras captured every second of the extravaganza. His daughter stood nearby, smiling faintly, while his younger brother clapped along to the music. They were proud, yet a quiet sadness rested in their eyes, because they knew the man they loved was being swallowed by arrogance. At midnight, the fireworks show began. The sky exploded in color, people cheered, and the music grew louder. But then, without warning, the ground trembled. At first, guests laughed, thinking it was part of the show. But within seconds, the laughter turned into screams. The earth shook violently, chandeliers shattered, the walls cracked, and the grand hall began to collapse. Panic spread like wildfire. Guests trampled each other in desperation, trying to escape. The once beautiful island turned into a scene of chaos. Smoke, dust, fire, and terror filled the air. The billionaire's glass fell from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. For the first time in years, fear replaced his pride. He turned and saw what no father, no brother should ever see. His daughter and younger brother stumbled as the roof gave way. With a deafening crash, heavy beams and concrete collapsed on them. Their cries echoed for a split second before being drowned in the chaos. The billionaire rushed toward them, clawing at debris with his bare hands. His suit tore, his fingers bled, but he screamed louder than the music, louder than the destruction around him. Help me, someone, please, my daughter, my brother, save them. But no one came. The same people who once worshipped him were now running for their own lives, leaving him alone in the storm. That night, the man who had everything faced the one thing his wealth could not stop, destiny. And in that moment, the billionaire's perfect world began to crumble. What good is wealth if you can't save the ones you love? That night, the billionaire learned the true meaning of helplessness. The island was in ruins. The once bright chandeliers now lay shattered across the marble floors. Flames licked the broken walls, and terrified guests screamed as they ran through the smoke. But the billionaire didn't see the chaos around him. His eyes were locked on one sight, his daughter and younger brother trapped beneath the crushing weight of steel and concrete. He dropped to his knees and began tearing at the rubble with his bare hands. His fingers ripped open, blood streaming down his palms, but he didn't care. "Hold on, please hold on," he cried, his voice shaking, breaking into sobs. Every piece of debris he lifted felt heavier than the last, as though destiny itself was mocking his strength. For the first time in his life, his money meant nothing. No private jet, no mansion, no luxury car could buy a single breath for his child. He screamed for help. "Somebody, anybody, help me save them!" But the people who had once worshipped him were gone. The guests who only hours ago laughed at his jokes and begged for his attention now pushed past each other to escape. His empire of friends vanished in the smoke. Not one hand reached out to help. Rescue teams arrived minutes later, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They rushed to save the survivors, pulling people from the wreckage. The billionaire clung to hope, begging them to hurry. His heart raced with every brick they removed. For a moment, he believed they could make it, but when the rubble finally shifted enough to reveal the faces he loved most, his world collapsed. His daughter lay still, her eyes closed, her tiny hand limp in his. Beside her, his brother's body was broken, lifeless, silent. No, please, no, the billionaire screamed, clutching them both to his chest. Tears poured down his face, soaking their dust-covered clothes. His cries echoed across the ruined hall, louder than the fire, louder than the chaos. "Take my money, take my life, just give them back to me." But wealth couldn't answer his prayers. The world's richest man was left powerless, cradling the cold bodies of the only people who truly mattered. That night, the billionaire didn't just lose his family, he lost the illusion that money could save him. The world cheered for him when he was on top. But when tragedy struck, those cheers turned into whispers and then into blame. The island disaster made global headlines within hours. Every news channel showed the billionaire's broken face, sitting in the ruins with his daughter's lifeless body in his arms. Reporters who once praised him for his power now called it the billionaire's fall. His tragedy became a spectacle for the world. At first, people flooded social media with sympathy. "Pray for him," they wrote. Millions watched the videos in shock, but sympathy didn't last long. Soon, the tone shifted. Questions turned into accusations. Why wasn't there proper safety on the island? Why were so many people trapped? Some called him careless. Others whispered it was punishment for his arrogance. The same business partners who toasted champagne with him only days earlier began to distance themselves. Contracts were quietly canceled. Invitations stopped coming. The powerful circles he had once dominated now treated him like a ghost. It was as if his tragedy had infected him, and everyone feared being dragged down with him. The billionaire, who once had the world at his feet, suddenly found himself alone. He walked into boardrooms and saw eyes turn away. Phones that never stopped ringing now sat silent on his desk. The empire he thought was unshakable began to crack, not because of money, but because of reputation. Fame had turned into poison. Every night, the billionaire replayed the disaster in his mind. He remembered his daughter's laughter as she watched the fireworks, his brother clapping to the music, and then the silence. The guilt tore him apart. If only I had listened. If only I had been a better father, a better brother. But if only couldn't change the past. His mansion felt like a prison. The grand chandeliers mocked him with their silence. The luxury cars in his garage gathered dust. Even his private jet, once a symbol of freedom, now felt like a useless cage. He had built an empire of gold, yet all he could feel was emptiness. For the first time, the billionaire realized the cruel truth of fame. It loves you when you shine, but abandons you when you fall. The world's richest man had mansions, cars, and billions in the bank. But now he had no one to talk to. His greatest prison wasn't built of walls, it was loneliness. The days after the tragedy stretched into endless nights. The billionaire no longer cared for meetings, parties, or cameras. He shut himself inside his mansion, away from the world that once celebrated his name. His phone, once buzzing every second with calls, offers, and praise, lay silent on his desk. The silence was louder than any crowd he had ever faced. At night, he sat in his daughter's empty room, holding her toys in his hands. Sometimes he would press her favorite teddy bear to his chest, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Daddy's sorry. Daddy was wrong. I should have been there for you." In his brother's study, he stared at old photographs, remembering the man who had always stood by his side, even when others turned against him. The guilt was unbearable. The grand mansion felt like a graveyard. Chandeliers sparkled above him, but they gave him no light. The echo of his footsteps in the marble halls only reminded him of how empty his empire had become. The luxury cars that once roared through city streets now sat lifeless in the garage, collecting dust. The private jet, once a symbol of freedom, remained grounded. He had thought wealth could protect him, but now he realized wealth could not buy love, it could not buy loyalty, and it could not buy back the people he had lost. The very things he ignored, family dinners, laughter, small conversations, were the things he missed the most. In his despair, the billionaire changed. The arrogance vanished. When he walked past his staff, he no longer ignored them. He greeted them. Sometimes he even asked them about their families, their struggles. And when they looked into his eyes, they saw something they had never seen before. Pain. Late at night, he sat alone by the window, staring into the darkness. He whispered to himself, "If money is everything, then why does my heart feel so empty?" The man who once thought he ruled the world was now just a broken soul, imprisoned not by poverty, but by the crushing weight of regret and loneliness. A billionaire who once counted his wealth in numbers now began to count it in tears. But pain has a way of teaching lessons that money never can. Weeks turned into months. The world had almost forgotten the island tragedy, but the billionaire could never forget. His heart carried the scars, and every day felt like a punishment. Yet in that darkness, a spark of realization began to grow. One evening, while driving through the city in his black limousine, he saw something that stopped him. On the roadside, a little boy, barefoot and shivering, was selling flowers to passing cars. The boy's eyes carried the same innocence as his late daughter's, and his frail hands trembled as he held out the roses. Drivers ignored him, some rolled up their windows, others looked away. For the first time in years, the billionaire stepped out of his car. He walked toward the boy, knelt down and asked softly, "Why are you out here at this hour?" The boy replied, "My mother is sick, sir. If I don't sell these flowers, we won't have food." The answer pierced the billionaire's heart like a blade. He bought every flower the boy had, gave him money far beyond the worth of roses, and told his driver, "Take me to his home." When he arrived at the boy's tiny broken house, he saw the sick mother lying on a mat, coughing, too weak to stand. The billionaire arranged immediate medical help, food, and shelter for them. But more than that, he sat with them, listened to them, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: human connection. That night, for the first time since the tragedy, he didn't cry himself to sleep. Instead, he whispered to himself, "Maybe my wealth isn't meant to be shown off. Maybe it's meant to heal." From that moment, the billionaire made a vow. He would no longer measure his worth by the size of his mansion or the shine of his cars. He would measure it by the lives he touched, his daughter's memory, his brother's love. He could not bring them back, but he could honor them by becoming a man they would be proud of. The billionaire had taken his first step toward redemption. They once knew him as the richest man in the city, but now they would remember him as the man who gave everything away to heal others. His empire of stone was gone, but his empire of hearts had just begun. The billionaire's journey of transformation didn't happen overnight. It was slow, painful, and filled with doubt. There were nights he woke up sweating, haunted by his daughter's laughter and his brother's voice. But unlike before, he no longer let the grief paralyze him. Instead, he used it as fuel. "If I couldn't protect my own family, maybe I can protect someone else's," he whispered one morning, as sunlight poured into his study. He began by creating a foundation in his daughter's name. It wasn't a glamorous charity with celebrities and red carpets. It was real, raw, and deeply personal. The foundation built schools for poor children, provided shelter for orphans, and funded hospitals for families who couldn't afford treatment. Every project carried the memory of his daughter's smile and his brother's wisdom. At first, the world didn't trust him. Many thought it was just another rich man's publicity stunt. But as time passed, people saw the truth. He wasn't cutting ribbons in front of cameras. He was sitting in classrooms with children, reading books to them. He was eating at orphanages with kids who had lost everything, just like he had. He was visiting hospital wards late at night, speaking gently to parents who feared losing their children. The same media that once mocked him now showed his tears as headlines. The same people who turned their backs on him now reached out to shake his hand. But fame no longer mattered. He didn't care for applause. He didn't care for spotlights. All he wanted was to give meaning to his pain. Years passed, his businesses shrank, his wealth declined, but he didn't mind. What he lost in dollars, he gained in dignity. His heart grew richer, even as his accounts grew smaller. For the first time in his life, he felt free. The golden cage of arrogance and greed had been broken, and in its place stood a man who understood the true currency of life: love, compassion, and sacrifice. One day, on the anniversary of his daughter's death, he returned to the island where the tragedy had happened. The ruins had long been cleared, but the memories still haunted him. He stood alone, holding a single white rose, and whispered, "I could not save you then, but you saved me now. Every child I help, every life I touch, it's all because of you." As he placed the flower in the sand, the waves carried it away like a message to the heavens. That evening, while watching the sunset from the shore, a group of children from his foundation ran up to him. They hugged him, laughed around him, and one little girl asked, "Uncle, why do you always help us so much?" With tears in his eyes, the billionaire smiled and replied, "Because once, I was the richest man in the world and still the poorest in my heart. But you children, you make me truly rich again." The moment was simple, but it was the peak of his journey. He realized that his legacy wasn't the skyscrapers he built or the millions he earned. His legacy was the lives he changed, the hope he gave, and the love he shared. As the years went on, stories of the broken billionaire spread across the world, not as a tale of arrogance and downfall, but as an example of redemption and humanity. He became a symbol, not of wealth, but of transformation. People told their children about him not because of his cars or homes, but because of the way he turned his pain into purpose. And when he finally took his last breath, the world mourned. Not the loss of a billionaire, but the loss of a man who taught them that no matter how far you fall, you can always rise again if your heart chooses love over pride. His empire of gold may have vanished, but the empire of hearts he built would last forever.